Okay, in this video we're going to start rigging the character that we modeled in the last video. So where we left off with, we had the character already built in lots of pieces, and so now we're going to put the rigging joints into them. So the first thing we want to make sure is that we have everything in the same mode. If you remember in the last video we covered that if pressing 1 is low poly and 3 makes it look really smooth. So we want to make sure that everything is in the same mode. So we don't have any things that pop into place. So I'm going to select everything and just press 1, and so it should pop everything in there. If it wasn't, it'd be 3, and you can see a smooth thing. So this way we know everything's correct. So now we're going to go through and decide how do we want these faceted surfaces to be smoothed out. So we can do multiple different options, but here's 2 different options. You can go to Mesh and Smooth. And what that does is that it smooths it out in comparison to, let's say, this one. Or option 2, you can go over to Normals and Soft Edge. And so that mostly smooths it out as well. The difference being, this one has a lot more polygons, and this one has a lot fewer, but they both look smooth. So if I Control Z that, you can see the original result. So in some cases it might be better to smooth it if you're okay with more polygons. Other cases you could just soft edge it. So either or. I'm going to select all of these, and let's go with normals, I guess soft edge, and I'll smooth those out just to kind of keep it low poly for the game engine, but it really won't matter if you smooth these with the other option. It's not too many polygons to add to the game engine. Alright, so now everything looks smooth and ready to go. Alright, so the next step, we're going to combine some pieces. So if I click on this, you notice that the shield is a separate piece and these little pieces are separate pieces. When we start animating, we want to keep all these pieces grouped together. So I'm going to click on this piece, hold shift and grab this piece, and then grab all the other pieces that will be one solid block with this piece. So all these should work. And then go up to Mesh, Combine. And they become one green color because it's one object now. I'm going to leave all these separate pieces because they're going to be different joints moving around. These two might as well connect because it's just going to be one piece, that this piece pivots around the ball. So I'm going to go again, Mesh, Combine, grab both of these, Mesh, Combine, and probably both of these, and then both of these. And the repeat key is G, so if you press G on the keyboard it repeats your last command, so that combines those. We can see here that all of these should be combined, so G will repeat the last command. But we also want to connect the neck pieces, so I'm going to grab all of these together and combine those. And then this should already be combined from last time. So we have the head, which will pivot back and forth on here. We have the visor, which will pivot up and down. We have the main body, the arm, the next leg, and then the foot and the toe can be separate, so that can be animated and bending also. So every major component that we're going to have on the character has been grouped together now. Or not necessarily grouped, but combined. Alright, so now we're going to start drawing our joints in place. So I'm going to jump out with spacebar, and if for some reason the spacebar doesn't pop you out into the other views, you might want to click one of these other buttons. So let's say I'm in the 4 viewport option, and now it pops out. So now spacebar should work. Sometimes it has issues like that. Alright, so let's go in the front viewport, and we're going to go over to change the polygon mode right here to animation mode, and that changes all the menus up here so that we have the option for skeleton and the joint tool. We're going to click on the joint tool, and we can start drawing our joints or the bones of where everything's going to go. So I'm going to start right here in the middle of his chest, and I'm going to click it once, and that drops a joint. And then I'm going to click and hold. If I click and hold, it moves it everywhere over the screen, as long as I'm holding on to it. But once I let go, let's say right where the elbow, or I guess the shoulder would be, it'll lock it in place. So I can either just click it once or click and hold and kind of fine-tune where I think it should go. So it's going to be the shoulder down to the upper arm joint or leg or whatever this is. Then I'm going to go down to the ankle area, and then I'm going to go down to the bottom of the foot and press spacebar then and pop out into the side view. And then I'm going to pan the screen a little bit using the Alt and the middle mouse button. And then put the last joint right where the toe is. And this way the toe can have a little bit of a bending, I guess. So I'm going to move the screen and kind of look at how it works now. So everything should be in a straight line right in the middle of the character. And the toe pops out this way. Pop back out, and I can see it here. So I'm going to press Enter now. And that confirms the joints. So if we see what we have now, the joints run right through the entire leg. If you want to see the joints overlapping here, you can go over to Shading and X-ray with Joints. What this does is that it shows the joints no matter where you're looking at the model. The joints are being X-rayed and you can see through the polygons. So that's really helpful for the rigging. So we're going to leave this on X-ray mode. And that's per viewport that you click on, whether you do it here or not. But since these are in wireframe, you're going to see through it anyway. Alright, so we've got the one leg done. So the next thing is let's go up for the head. And again, I'm going to use the front viewport to keep it in a nice straight line. We'll go up to Skeleton, Joint Tool. And I'm going to click one click right on the character, or right on that joint, and this will automatically attach it to the previous bone, but it'll go in the opposite direction now. So one click on there, and then I can click and hold and kind of move this right to where the neck will start. And then move this up right into the middle of the visor where the head's going to be. And then spacebar, pop back out. And put this right in the front of his visor where it's going to flip up and down. If you don't have a visor, then you wouldn't have to worry about that one. But any other pieces you want to move around with a joint, you would keep using the bone tool. So Enter to confirm that. And now we have one big long piece. So let's figure out what this all means now. So if I go, let's say, to the Move tool, and I click on, let's go to Rotate actually. If I click on this bone right here, it selects from here down. And if I click Rotate, you can notice that the joints of the bones are rotating. And if I click to the next bone down, you can see again that it's rotating our character. And every time I'm pressing Ctrl-Z to undo, you don't want to rotate and then kind of try and rotate it back in place because it might not be accurate. You can see your numbers up here. So Ctrl-Z, Ctrl-Z, and try and keep everything exactly the way you left it. If you ever move anything, always press undo. Don't move it and move it back. Alright, so if I click on this one, what's going to happen now is that it highlights everything. But if I click, let's say, off of there, click the next one up, and I go to Rotate, you can see that it would rotate his neck. And the next one should be his visor up and down. But this one right here is now rotating, and if I go to Move, it'll move everything. So it moves his entire body. So this is going to be our main root joint. So when you grab this one, it moves the entire character around. Whereas if you grab just this one, the next one down, and you go to Rotate, it'll just move one part of it. It won't move the entire body. And this one above just moves the neck. But grabbing the root joint will move the entire character around. Alright, so once we have that, instead of redoing the joints again on this leg, we can just mirror it across. But before we mirror it, let's name all the joints so the naming will also be mirrored to the other side. So I'm going to click the first one, and this will be, actually let's do this one. This one will be our, we can call it the root joint if we want, or the body. So I'm going to call it body. Press Enter. So now we've named just this one. It highlights them all, but it's still just naming the one. So let's click the next one over. This one we're going to call the upper. I'm going to use underscore to divide things out, keep the naming all together. Upper, let's call it upper leg. And this is the left leg. So upper leg left. Enter. Let's grab the next one. So this is lower leg left. So upper leg left, lower leg left. We'll call this ankle left. And this one is the toe left. Even though it kind of looks like it's the foot, this bone right here, when it moves, will move the toe for us. If we got into more of a complex foot structure, which we'll be doing later in the next project, we'll have a lot more complexity down here. But for now, we're just going to call it the toe. So this joint right here, when it rotates, doesn't really change anything at this point. So I'm just going to call this the toe tip left, just to have some kind of name for it so we know what we're looking at. Sometimes with all the joints, it gets really confusing when you have a whole lot of bones and you have to organize those. So let's go up to here and call this the neck. And the last one, well, almost last one, we'll call this the visor. And then the very last one, the visor tip, which again won't really matter since it doesn't really affect anything. So now that we've named all that, I don't want to grab this one because it'll grab everything. Let's grab this one so it just selects this side, and I'm going to mirror this to the other side. It's not going to be mirror geometry this time. We're going to go to skeleton, and we're going to mirror the joint, which is a little bit different than mirror geometry. So let's switch over here and grab this little square which pops out the options, and we need to set the correct axis. You have a couple options, X, Y, Y, Z, and X, Z, to figure out what this means. We're going to look at the X, Y, Z axis down here in the bottom left. If we look at it, we have the X going to the right, Y going up, and Z coming towards us. And this is asking for a plane, which means a dividing wall, I guess you would say. So if I spin the screen this way, this is the YZ axis, which means if you can imagine an invisible wall is right here splitting the character in half. And so we're going to switch from this one half of the wall to the other half. So this is the YZ. And that's how that kind of works on this mirror across. So YZ, whereas the Y-axis would split them in half from this front side to the back side. So that's the Y-axis. So we're going to press mirror, and it'll mirror his joints right to the other side perfectly in place for us. Now we just have to make sure we've named everything again. So this is the upper leg, but instead of left 1, we're going to call this R for right. And then the next one down, right, ankle, right, toe, right, oops, toe, right, and toe tip right. So this can get rather tedious naming everything over and over again, but it's a lot more practical when you get to a lot of joints and stuff. So it's good to be in practice with that when we're organizing everything. Alright, so we now have all the joints in the right place. And I probably should have mentioned this sooner, but if your joints aren't looking nice and matching like this, nice and fitting, you might need to adjust your display size, which that's over in the window, window animation, oops, no. Display animation joint size. So yeah, display animation joint size. If you click on this, your joint size is right here. So right now it's at 0.5. If your joints are like too big or too small, you can adjust your joint size right here with the joint display. So I'm going to put that back at 0.5. And when we get to the IK handles also, it's right next to it. So animation IK handle size if you need to make that smaller or larger. Alright, so we have this here. Next up, we're going to, I guess we should probably clear out some history here. So all this history stuff, we want to make this clean and organized. So if I go over to Window, Hypergraph Hierarchy, we're going to start combining a lot of things. So if I pop this open, we can start to see that we have a lot of different pieces. So all these pieces are all the pieces of the character. And if I look over here, you can see that we have some structure starting to occur. These are all the parents and what's in charge of what. So if I grab like this bone, this root bone is in charge of all of this, whereas this bone is only in control of the 3 down below. And if I keep going lower, it's a hierarchy of what's in control. So that's why it's called the hypergraph hierarchy. So all these extra points right here that we can see, we want to kind of minimize this and clean this up so it's not quite messy. We want to make one big clean column for our character. So if we delete out some of this history, so all these inputs right here are what's taking up space over here. So if I go over to Edit, Delete by Type, History, you can notice that it adjusted some of our spacing here and cleaned out all of that. So the more history we wipe out, the more clear our hypergraph's going to get. So again, we have some here, and you could just grab both of these at once and go Edit, Delete by Type, History, and it'll clear out both at once. So it cleared out this one and this one. So in other words, I can just keep grabbing all these different pieces. Try and avoid the joints. We don't want to mess with the joints at this time. So we have all these pieces, and I'll grab the head and the visor. So we have all these different pieces selected now. And you can see all these different yellow spacings, so we want to kind of clear out all that history. So Edit, Delete by Type, History. And so now it minimized a lot of what we have. So all these yellow points will get stuck into this big tall tree tower as we start combining everything. And chances are these last two right here are these other pieces that we missed or don't have currently selected. And so now the last thing we also want to do, actually no, that part's already done. Alright, so now we have our character mostly modeled. If we grab the middle part, we can move him around, the entire character starts moving. If we grab each point at a time, his joints start moving, and we can start basically animate our character. But if we were going to, let's say, walk him forward and we rotate the joint, you can see how tedious this would be to kind of try and rotate his foot into place just to move it forward, and that's not going to work too well. So what we're going to do now is create a control that can basically move his foot forward for us. And this is called IK, or Inverse Kinematics. So if we go over to Skeleton and IK Handle Tool and pop out the options, and let's move the hypergraph down there for now. The IK handle settings, we want to change the single chain, otherwise called SC solver, to RP, or rotate plane solver. And so we want to use this for the arm, leg orientations here. It applies more for more complex characters and knee joints and elbow joints and all that, but this will work for what we're doing. Alright, so we're going to take this IK solver and we're going to click the top shoulder joint just once, and then we're going to click the ankle joint once. And that draws a line right between the two of them. So if I rotate the screen around, you can see this white pointy arrow. This is indicating that the joint bends in this direction. And because the angle of the joint is already bent here, it can figure that the joint will keep bending in that direction with that bend. So if I go to, let's say, the Move tool, and I try and move this now, you notice that the joint is bending in that direction, and I can move this foot wherever I want. If I wanted to go to this view, I can move the foot forward, and he can basically walk back and forth, and I don't have to rotate every one of these joints along the way to get that result. And so this is called the IK handle. So we have the one on here now, and let's put the IK handle on the other side as well. So let's click off of there. Let's go up to Skeleton, IK handle tool, and the settings should already be the same. So I'm going to go click this one and this one, and it draws the IK line right through it. And again, we can test it if we want to. We're already on the Move tool, so I can move this forward, and you can see that his leg will move around. Alright, Control Z, pop that in place. Alright, so we have the IKs in place. We also want to do an IK down to the ankle area, and this will fix the foot from rolling around while he moves. So let's click off there. Let's go Skeleton, Joint tool, or IK handle tool. I'm going to click the top one to the bottom one, and that puts another one in there. And then we'll click off and do one more time. Skeleton, IK handle tool, this joint to that joint, and we're good. So if we wanted to move this handle, you can click the handle, and that moves this. And if you click the next one down, that'll move the ankle of the foot. So let's undo that. Alright, so now we have this in place. The next thing we want to do is basically put handles that are easier to grab. So we don't want to have all these different joints, and you don't want to have to grab every one of these bones to move the character around. especially when they get all hidden inside your character. We want to make sure that we have something on the outside, a handle that we can grab. So I'm going to go over to, and you can see here the tree is starting to parent a lot of things together the more we keep going. I'm going to go over to this curves tab. There's other tabs here, but let's go with curves. Click the circle and then use spacebar to pop out. And I'm going to zoom in on the top view and figure out where his foot is in the center of the foot and draw a circle somewhere about there. And then we're already on the move tool, so I'm going to center it as best as I can and then scale it so it looks like it mostly fits around his foot. And that should work more or less. And you don't have to use a circle. You could draw out a shape if you want. You could actually make a footprint. You can make any shape you want, but this is simple enough. So we're going to take this and slide this down, and I'm going to look at the bottom right viewport to figure out where that's aligning at. So if that's in the right place now, we'll be basically using this green handle to move his foot around instead of using these little pointy tabs sticking out here. If you want it to be a little bigger, we can scale a little bigger while we're at it. And once we're happy with it, we want to make sure we clear out this history. Not necessarily history, but the transformations, because we don't want the animator being like, oh, this foot isn't the original position. I want to zero this out, press 0, and put it back. Unfortunately, that puts it back somewhere else. So we want to make sure that when the animator presses 0, it puts the foot back in the original location of the model. So to clear out these numbers, we want to go over to Modify and Freeze Transformations. You click on this, it'll wipe out everything and set everything to 0. So now if the animator zeroes everything out, it'll put it right in the middle or right back where it should be. So once we have that zeroed out, we're going to make another one. So we're going to press Ctrl D to duplicate and slide the duplicate over here and kind of center it as best we can so it looks as accurate as possible. That should work. And then again, we want to clear out this translation so the animator doesn't zero it and moves it back over to there. So we'll go Modify, Freeze Transformations, and that wipes it to 0. So we want to keep zeroing everything as a permanent position for so nothing gets messed up. All right, so we've got the 2-leg or the 2-foot curves in place. We've already deleted the history and everything. We're not going to delete it on the joints. It doesn't really have any, and we also need these to function at the moment. And we've named everything as well as possible. Actually, the surfaces aren't as big of a deal unless you wanted to name them on here. We could call these, let's say, body if we wanted to, and call this foot and keep naming these. But the joints are more important for the what we're focusing on now. But we can at least do the main stuff. Foot. Oops, left. And foot. Right. Call this visor. And head. Alright. I could rename everything if I wanted to. It makes it easier to figure out what you're looking at. Instead of a poly surface here and a poly surface here, you've got names of everything. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is start parenting things together. This handle that we've made, it moves around, but it doesn't move the foot, whereas this handle right here does move it. So we want to take a parent-child relationship where the parent can move a child, but the child can't move the parent. So in order to do this, we click the child first. So this is the child, this is what will be moved, and then we click the parent. So I'm going to hold Shift and grab the handle. So I've clicked it in a specific order, the child, and then the parent. And then if you press P on the keyboard, it'll parent it. But if you have this this curve jumping back up to there, you could have your parent settings off a little bit. So this one didn't jump, so it should be fine. If I move it, you can see that it now moves the foot. Control Z that. But in case it does move, I'll demo on this side. We would click the child and the parent, and then go over to Constrain, Parent Constrain, and go to the options. we want to make sure maintain offset is checked. If it's not checked and it's missing right there and you press apply, it'll pop the ring into the wrong place because it didn't maintain the offset. So now when you click the ring, actually it doesn't move this either, whereas the handle is now the parent. So for some reason, the parent-child relationship, if you click child parent and then do it through the menu, it's actually parent-child. So you would want to click parent-child, maintain offset, and do it through the menu. And now this will be the parent. But if you're pressing P on the keyboard, you do child-parent. So menu is parent-child, P on the keyboard is child-parent. I'm not sure why they swapped those. Alright, so we've got these. And if we grab the handles, it'll move the foot around on both sides. But if you notice, the ankle kind of like rolls around when you move the character. And if I move him from up here, let's say move him around, his feet don't really stay too glued to the ground. He moves, his feet kind of anchor there, but they're kind of swimming around down there. We want them to kind of be glued to the ground as the body moves. So in order to do that, we're going to parent these things as well. So child, hold shift and grab the next one. And we'll press P on the keyboard and it'll parent this joint or this IK to the foot as well. So now if I move this, it keeps the foot locked flat on the ground. And if I consequently move the character up here, you can see the foot is glued to the ground. He can move as much as you want forward and backwards, and eventually it'll pull him off the ground if you go too far. But more or less, his foot's glued, whereas the other side, the right side, is spinning around a lot. So that's why we had the two IKs down here. So again, child, hold shift, grab the handle, press P for parent, and that locks that. So now when I grab this, I can move the joint, and the foot stays straight. And if I grab the main root or the body, he can move all around, and eventually he'll come off the ground if you move him too high, but otherwise his feet stay planted to the ground. Okay, so the next thing we're going to worry about, or work on, is we're going to put, let's say, a body handle on as well. So we have the feet handles that we can move around. We should probably also name these things as well. So this is going to be called the foot right, left. And this will be the, or I could call it foot control if I wanted to be more specific. Foot right. So we have left foot and right foot. Now let's make a body control so I can move his entire body. So I'm going to click on circle again, but again you can make any shape you want. I'm going to drag this circle right in the middle and kind of measure around his body. Then we'll move it in place, and that looks like it's pretty centered around him. And in terms of this view, we'll grab this ring to move his body. So it looks pretty good. I'm going to call this the body handle. Alright, and again we want to reset these translations. So I'm going to go over to modify, freeze transformations, and that wipes that out. And we can also get rid of the history right here. So edit, delete by type, history, and that clears that out as well. This one does have some history in it. Let's see if we can still get rid of the history. Delete by type, history. Yep, it looks like it erased history, and the joints still work. Let's grab this. Yep, joints still work. So we can delete out the history as well. And I should clear out some of these extra spots. Edit, delete by type, history. Alright, so that cleaned out that. Alright, so now let's parent this root. So I'm going to click on the child, which is this, and hold shift, grab the parent, which would be the main control, press P. So now when I grab this ring, I can use the ring to grab the character. I don't have to grab the center joint, which will be hidden inside the character eventually. And the last thing, we're going to put a face ring on here so we can control the visor. So I'm going to do one more circle. I'm going to draw it right in the middle of his head, somewhere about the size of his visor. And then let's move that over a little bit to center it. And I have to move it up. And I'll probably move it forward just to cover his face. So this control can spin up and down and create his visor, but I don't need it to sit in the back of his head, so I'm going to delete some of those points. I could also make it a little bigger if I want to, scale it up, make it a little easier to find and grab. Let's go to right click, and I'm going to go to Control Vertex, and then select these back end points. So I've got these 3 right here, and if I press delete, it'll delete out some of them. And let's grab some more. Let's grab these 3 again, press delete again, and eventually you'll start deleting out the back end of the curve. And if I go right click and go back to object mode, now we have half of a curve, and so this will be the visor control point. But since we moved to forward, you can see that this little yellow square isn't on the joint anymore. So if I were to rotate this, it doesn't quite rotate to the center of where the joint should be. So I'm going to move this center point. To move the pivot point where it bends, you press the insert key on the keyboard. And insert, it changes the way this coordinates look. So if I slide this way back here and press insert again to turn off the pivot point, you can see that my control is sitting way outside of here. If I go to rotate this, it rotates from back there now. So that's kind of an exaggeration of what we're going for, so I'm going to Control Z and put that back. Basically, we just want to make sure this center point is on the pivot of the joint to make it a little more accurate. It's a small minor change, but might as well be more accurate. So if you want to, instead of just sliding and guessing where that is, you can actually hold V on the keyboard and hold the middle mouse button down the scroll wheel, and it'll pop it right in place. So it locks it right in the center. Press insert and pop off the edit pivot mode. So now you can see that the pivot has popped perfectly in the center of that joint. So now if I go to rotate, it rotates right around the middle of the joint. It doesn't move the mask yet or any of the parts of them yet, but we have that in here. I'm going to call this the visor handle, and I'm going to modify freeze transformations to get rid of all those numbers we have, and edit, delete by type, history, and that clears out that. So now we have the visor handle, the body handle, and the feet controls. Those are the 4 things we'll mostly be leaving on a character once we're all done. We've frozen the transformations, deleted the history, and now at long last we can start attaching all this geometry because our guy is mostly at this point ready to go. So I'm going to grab, let's maximize this. We're going to take the, again, parent-child relationship. The child, which is this, is going to be controlled by which joint? Not by this joint. We want to make sure the body is controlled by the main root joint, so I'm going to hold shift and grab the root and then press P for parent. So now when I click off there and click on the ring, you can see that the main parent controls the body. And let's undo that. If I rotate, you can see that he rotates, the main body rotates as well. And if for some reason you misparent something, Control Z it. But if you go too far and you need to unparent something, let's say we have this is parented to this, or it should be, but let's say I accidentally put this one parented to this one, and I press P, and then I try and rotate this. Okay, move this guy. You can see that it's moving the wrong joint. He shouldn't be doing that. So if I need to unparent this, I can grab this piece by itself, right click, go down to Actions and Unparent, and that'll pop it back out, sits it back on the side over there. When I go back to moving this guy, it doesn't control it anymore. So you can unparent things. Sometimes if you go too far, it might be harder to unparent, but you can use your up and down arrow to kind of jump through the different parent hierarchy. You can see the up and down arrows jumping through here. So if for some reason you can't unparent it, it's giving you an error message, you can use your up and down arrows to isolate and pick the specific part you want and then unparent that. Alright, so we have this connected. So this one goes to this one. So child to parent P, child to parent P, and then we'll grab this one. Child to parent on this one, P, and then this last one, the little toe, child to parent here, P. So what we have now is that this handle, if I move it, will move the entire leg. And if I move this one over here, you can see that it moves his legs but leaves the foot until I pull him too far, and then he pulls off. So we start to have a really cool looking moving object. We still need to parent the other side though. So child, this joint is the parent, P, child, hold shift, grab this one, P. This one is going to be connected to this one. I think I got that right. Let's try that again. This one, yep, this one. It was a purple color. Let's make sure you get the right selections. P for that. And this one, hold shift and grab that one, P. And you can see here this tree is really starting to formulate a lot of long vertical column, and we want to make sure all these other pieces eventually filter out. Alright, so if I grab this, this should move his leg also. Cool. We have the body here. And then the last thing is the head up here. So this is going to be the child of this, which is the parent, P. And this will be the child of this one, P. So if I rotate here, it rotates the visor. And if I grab this joint here, it rotates the head. But we need to put these so we don't have to grab the joints, we want to grab the controls. So I'm going to grab this one, oops, the visor, and then that'll be the parent, P. So now this will rotate the visor. We don't have to grab the joint anymore. And if we want to add one more ring right in the middle so we can make the head or the neck rotate a little better, let's go over and grab ring again. I'll draw one more, somewhere about, I guess this big. We can adjust it later. I'll move it a little bit to center it, and then move it up. Alright. So this can be our rotate ring. We could also try and rotate this if we want to be more vertical, I guess. I'll make that 90 and scale it down. We don't need it super large. And then I'll move it down here right in the middle of that joint. And so what this does is that if I go to rotate this, I'll be grabbing from a more logical direction right here, and it'll spin his head up and down. So I'm going to reset transformations, clear out that, and edit, delete by type history. And that clears out that. That should work there. And you can modify this ring if you wanted to be horizontal instead of vertical, or if you wanted to pick something else. You don't have to use the same setup as this. But we're going to name this the neck handle, and we're going to take the head and then hold shift and grab this ring, make that the parent, P for parent. So this, if we go to rotate, should rotate the head. Perfect. And this rotates the visor. Perfect. Unfortunately, let's double check this one. If I move this, this no longer moves the head, and this no longer moves the visor. So the parent order is a little messed up now. The problem is this, which was parented to the main root, became parented instead to this, which means this needs to move when this moves. So this handle needs to control this handle, and this handle needs to control this handle. So our parents got a little out of order over here. So this will be the child of this one. So handle to handle, press P for parent. So now when this parent moves, let's go to rotate, it'll move this handle, and this handle controls this. So again, the same thing. When this handle moves, it needs to control the other handle, because this handle controls everything above it. So this child is now parented to this one, so we'll press P. So now when I move this guy, it moves the whole upper body. And then I can grab this and move that upwards, and grab the visor and move it down, and I can create an interesting looking position for the character. Alright, so we have that all worked out. Let's probably make that larger. And you can see the graph is becoming a lot more taller. Alright, so let's see what else we have in here. So we have, and since we named everything, it makes it easier to tell what we're looking at. This is the foot. This is the other foot. This one has one handle, this one has two handles attached to it. And this one has a separate handle attached to there, so they're not quite linked up just yet. And this one, poly surface right here, I'm not really sure what that one is. We can try and delete it and see what happens. Press delete on the keyboard, and it deletes, so I guess we didn't need that one. Control Z, Control Y. Yep, nothing's really changing, so I guess we didn't need that one. So now we just have this little section right here that should be linked up into one tall graph like this, and everything will be our rigged character. So we've got the, let's see, the root handle and the freeze transformations and everything. We want to do, I guess, one more main handle. If we move the guy and when we want to move the character, we can move him forward and he can start walking forward and all that. If we want to put him somewhere though, we'd have to grab all of them, and it gets a little more tricky to try and grab every one of these different little pieces to move the character somewhere we want. So we're going to make one big handle to drop him in place. So to do that, I'm going to jump out to the top view right here, zoom out a little, and I'm going to click on this little curve tool right here. Let's move this screen down a little more. So this tool, I'm going to click instead of 3 cubic. What that basically means is if I click 3 turns, it'll start curving a line. I can press enter to confirm, but I'm going to Control Z to delete it. I'm going to go back to try this again, and I'm going to set it to linear. So now it'll click a straight line every time. And if I hold X on the keyboard, it'll snap it to the grid. So let's say I put an X here, or click here, and here. I can start creating a shape around the character. And then press enter to confirm that. And now I have sort of like an arrow pointing so we know which direction is the center or the forward for it. So let's jump out and let's try and align this. I'll pull it down in this view. Alright, and let's make sure it's not on his feet. It's close, but it's not going to be too hard to grab two different things. So this is going to be, let's modify freeze transformations and delete history. Alright, and name this, this will be our main, I guess we can call this, root handle. So this will be the entire character controller, so we can move the entire character at once and position him anywhere we want. So this will be the main parent. So this will be everything else up to the guy, but we also want to include the feet joints. So I'm going to hold shift and grab all 3 of these first, and then the very last thing I grab, hold shift and grab this, and you can see they're lining everything up. If I press P for parent now, it puts everything in control of this. So this is the main master control now. So if I move this character, it moves the entire character. If I rotate this, I can rotate the character whichever direction it's going to start from. And if I scale it, it should scale the entire character as a global unit. So you can drop them everywhere. So this is going to be the master control. And when you're ready to animate the character, you would grab this one and you basically walk him out of there. So these would go forward and he would start walking forward and he would leave that behind. So this is just to position him in the scene when you start off and turn him and put him in whatever position you need him. And he'll walk out of there when he's done. So you can Control Z everything. And then the very last thing, it looks like we have this section which isn't quite parented into a particular order. So let's see where that one didn't quite pop in right. Alright, so we have this one and this. Alright, and then if I grab this, it's highlighting that, and if I grab this, it highlights down here. So somehow this should be down there. This is a parent of this one. So this is parented to this, which means this should be parented to this as well, and it looks like it's not quite there. So I'm going to grab this guy and then hold shift, grab this, and press P for parent, and it should actually pop them out over here. Let's see what happened here. Well, he still moves correctly there, and he still moves correctly here. So let's see what this is. All right, this guy. This guy looks like he's working well. So I guess he should just be parented back to the main controller right here. So we'll press P to parent that again, and that should drop it in place there. So now it's cleaned up our graph. So if I move this, it moves the entire character. If I move this, it moves his upper body. If I move this, it moves his foot. And if I move this, it moves his foot. And if I move this, well, we don't want to move that one, we want to rotate that one. It rotates his visor. And this one right here will rotate his neck. Cool, so he's pretty much rigged at this point. We just want to do a little more cleanup and get rid of all these different joints that we're seeing. So our graph, our hypergraph is nice and organized. We have one tall tree of everything parented together. So grabbing this top one grabs everything we need in the character. So I can close that out now. The only two remaining objects now are the front, which is probably our camera, our camera front view, and then the image plane, which we drew the character on top of. So those are those two things. So they can just stay outside the character. They don't need to be linked in. So I'm going to close out that, and I can close out the tool settings right here. Alright, so let's make sure, so everything's zeroed out. So if I grab any of these points, they're all zero. The animators can easily reset the character. If they were to, let's say, move them and they want to say, I want to put them back, they can press 0 and it pops them back in place where he started from. So let's turn off the rest of these joints. To hide these, actually we want to put them on their own separate layer as well, and we want to lock and hide some of the other controls. So let's say for this one, this foot control, we want to be able to move it. So we want our translates open. We want to be able to rotate it because the foot should be able to rotate. And we want to be able to, we don't have any need to scale it. So we don't want to scale the foot. So we don't need any of these scales. And we have no need for the visibility. So I'm going to select all of these, right click, and go to lock and hide selected. This way it locks them so they can't be controlled, grayed out our controller, and it hides them off the channel list. If for some reason you need to bring them back, we go to Edit, Channel Control, and you have a list of everything here. So we hid the scale, so if I slide down to Scale, we have Scale X, Y, Z. I can grab these three, and I can click Move, and it'll move them back into this menu, which will appear on here again. So Move pops them back here. And they're still locked, so I'd have to right click and go to Unlock Selected, and it'll unlock it so we can move that again. But I'm going to go back to Lock and Hide, and I'm going to go re-hide these. Hide Selected. Alright, so those are back off, and I can close this again. So we'll do the same thing here. So this one we don't need scale and visibility, so we'll go Lock and Hide Selected. And this one, we want to be able to translate, rotate, but again, we don't need scale and visibility, so lock and hide selected. And then this one, we have no need to move it, because if we move it, we're just going to basically be moving his jaw. We don't need to do that, so we have no need for translates, and we have no need for scale and visibility, so I'm going to lock and hide these selected. But in terms of rotates now, which rotate do we need? If we grab this one and try and rotate, we need the X rotation, but we're never going to spin his visor this way, and we're never going to spin his visor this way, so we can get rid of the Y and Z. So I'm going to lock and hide those. So the only thing left if we click on this tool is one way to spin them. The other ones won't spin anymore, they've been locked and hid. So now the last thing is the neck. His neck's not going to spin like this unless you want it to, and it definitely won't spin like, well, it looks like it's kind of broken there. It wasn't quite modeled to look like it should do that. It should move more like that, and if you want him to turn, he can just turn his body like this. So depending on what you're going for, I'm going to lock and hide the other rotates. I only want the X, so I'm going to take all of these except for rotate X and lock and hide selected. Boom. So now the only thing I can do with this guy is, oops, that didn't work. Grab the ring. Alright, so now the only thing I can do is move here. What happened is I grabbed the polygon, the joint. So I don't want to grab the joint, and I don't want to grab the polygons either. So we want to make sure that we deactivate the polygons and the joints from the animator so they can't touch them anymore. So I'm going to select everything. That didn't work too well. I'm going to grab all of the mesh. So if I hold shift and grab all the different pieces of the character, alright, so we have the mesh. Now I can put it on its own separate layer, or I can attach it and put all the joints in separate layers, or on the same layer or separate layers as well. I'm probably going to separate just to make it a little bit easier to work with. So all of these, the polygons, I'm going to click on this add new layer with the selected objects. So click on that and it makes a new layer. And this new layer is visible, and I can turn it off and see what's on this layer. I'm going to reference it so I can't click it. So no longer can the animator accidentally grab this. And the same thing with the joint. I don't want to be able to grab any of these joints. So if I grab the main root joint, I should be able to I can either add it to the same layer or just make a whole new layer and probably name these things. This one I'm going to reference as well and then turn off and hide. Unfortunately, it hides everything else in terms of character because it got attached to it. So we'd have to manually go through, unreference that, and select the joints. But even still doing that, it's still going to hide it. So we can't really hide the joints too well. So the other option to hide this from the animator so they don't grab these joints is to go over to Show, and we're going to turn off joints so the animator can't see the joints anymore. But before we turn off Show Joints, yep. So yeah, we don't want to have the animator be able to grab these joints. Unfortunately, it won't, can't grab unless we, no, it's still attached. Okay, so we're just going to leave that. We'll go Show and don't show the joints, and we're going to turn off Show and turn off IK handle so it turns off those. And so the very last thing we have left is basically these little rings. So if you try and select anything, the character is locked, we can't grab them anymore. I'll reference that as well. So I can grab this little ring right here, and I can move the visor in one direction. I can grab his neck, and I can move that in one direction. I can grab this, and I can move it in any direction. And I can move this one as well, and he can start bouncing around. And I can grab this one and move his foot wherever I want. This one, move the foot. And it's limited to whatever controls I need. If I need to rotate his foot, I can rotate it as well. And the main master control, the root control, I can rotate him wherever he needs to go or move him. And that should pretty much set up all of our character for rigging now. Yep, and there's the camera back there. Alright, so that should be about it.